Nicole, my friend and colleague, Taylor, is president and CEO of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, but really has had a career that has been all across the Bay Area on a variety of issues, and I can safely say that she and I have literally grown up in this work together. And so it's really always a pleasure to be in her company. The Silicon Valley Community Foundation probably doesn't need much of an introduction. It is the largest community foundation in this country, which probably means it's the largest community foundation in the world. Yeah. And Nicole has really brought a spirit to that work that has been about connecting all of those assets under management to the issues that are impacting us here in the Bay Area generally, and in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties more specifically. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred. Thank you. And he's right. We were 12 when we started in this work, but we did grow up together. So joining us on stage, Priscilla Chan and Chris Iglesias. So I want to give you a little bit about their backgrounds, too. So I've had the privilege of working with Priscilla for 5 years, because I started 5 years ago. One of my first events was the launch of Partnership for the Bay's Future in this room. So Priscilla really needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway because she really deserves it. So she's the co-founder and co-CEO of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. And as a pediatrician and teacher, Priscilla's work with patients and students in communities across the Bay Area has informed her desire to make learning more personalized, find new paths to manage and cure disease, and expand opportunity for more people. She is also the founder of the primary school, and anybody down in our neck of the woods needs to go visit. It's a phenomenal school. And it integrates health and education and serves children and families in East Palo Alto. Priscilla earned her BA in biology at Harvard and her MD at UCSF, and completed her pediatrics training in the UCSF Plus Pediatrics residency. She's the real deal, folks. And then we have Chris, who's the CEO of the Unity Council, East Oakland's social equity development organization devoted to improving the quality of life for the residents of the largest Latino neighborhood in the Bay Area, Oakland's Fruitvale District, and through a place-based economic and intergenerational equity agenda. And through Chris's leadership, the Unity for 11 years,
11 years.
Yes, 11 years. The Unity Council is responsible for providing holistic support services to over 5,000 individuals and families, including high-quality early education, pioneering youth programming, robust senior citizen services, and financial and career empowerment. In addition, he oversees $125 million more? How much? More.
500 million?
500 million?
Yeah,
Hey,
I forgot to edit that.
You didn't edit it.
No, I didn't edit that. I didn't catch that. It's my bad.
He was supposed to edit his bio
my bad,
before
my
I
bad.
read it.
I know, my bad. I know.
So
it has more impact on the spot.
It does. It does. Over $500 million in assets, including the management of major affordable housing and community real estate like the Fruitvale Transit Village, another phenomenal place. And it's a nationally recognized transit-oriented development project. And Chris currently serves on the Job and Housing Coalition and Spur Oakland Board, as well as Oakland Thrives Leadership Council. And Fred started us off, but he also needs an introduction because you usually don't get one. They just ask you to the stage.
Just push me out.
They just push you out, put a mic in your hand. So you can see we're going to have some fun today. So Fred, as we all know, CEO of the San Francisco Foundation, 10 years?
Be 10 in June.
10 in June.
Wow.
Yeah. One of the largest community foundations in the country. The San Francisco Foundation, under his leadership, really works hand in hand with donors, community leaders, and public and private partners to create thriving communities throughout the entire Bay Area. And they are a true partner. There's 10 counties in the Bay Area, 8 community foundations, and I can say that Fred's leadership at the San Francisco Foundation often brings us all together, marching in one direction, and that's always with equity at the center, and the fact that we are one region and we need to partner and collaborate. And That is my colleague, Fred. This is what he does all day, every day. He is a recognized leader nationally for his work. And as he said, he was in government prior to joining the San Francisco Foundation. He was at the City of Oakland, and then he serves on the board of the Independent Sector, the Bridgespan Group, the Latino Community Foundation, and the League of California Community Foundations. So please, another warm welcome. Okay, we are going to start right at the top with Priscilla and Fred. What motivated you to launch the Partnership for the Bay's Future, and what makes it such a unique initiative? So, Priscilla, please.
Well, we were actually just remembering back to, 5-6 years ago, all the individual, there's so many people that sort of needled us on this to say, like, this is an important topic. And so there's been so many people along the way, but what has always hit home is that the Bay Area is our home. Mm-hmm. I'm adopted. You're born and raised.
Yes.
But the Bay Area is our home. The Bay Area is can be and is such a beautiful place to live and thrive. But housing has been and still is a hard problem to tackle. It is hard for individuals and it's hard for families to find a safe, stable place to live. And for me, as a pediatrician, at that time at San Francisco General Hospital, I saw firsthand every day how housing can provide stability for children to be able to go to school, thrive, sleep, one of the core things that you need growing up. And it can be a place that causes you to be unwell. I've seen asthma exacerbations, lead poisoning, like unsafe housing can cause real physical ailments for children. And so it's always been, it's never been lost to me that stable housing is critical for a whole community, including our children, to thrive in. And, but it was at that time felt like an even bigger, harder problem to tackle. It felt so insurmountable. And Fred and I, and maybe he remembers it differently. I remember us starting to talk to just a whole bunch of folks. A lot of them were like, that's going to be hard. But really talking to people across sectors. It didn't matter what kind of work you did, where you came from. Like, we were interested in talking to you about how we can work together, public and private partnerships, to be able to form what has become a Partnership for the Bay's Future, to improve housing affordability for folks across the socioeconomic spectrum, but especially for those who can least afford it, to promote racial equity and economic inclusion for individuals who can and want to call the Bay Area home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, Fred.
Yeah. Thankfully, my version of it doesn't deviate too far from what she said.
It's been a hard 5 years.
It is, yes. And there were the COVID years or everything. Yes.
There are just a couple of things I would add. Nothing to really add about we all know the intensity of the crisis, and that was something that I think motivated all of us. But I would just add a couple of other things. One is our housing market is a regional one.
Yes.
And the Partnership for the Bay's Future is an important part of this because regional problems call for regional solutions. And so one of the things that I think was really important when we got around the table early on was to figure out the geography. And you all know, you all are sitting here, Bay Area is made up of 101 different cities. So the notion of trying to solve this one city or a time, one jurisdiction at a time, was something that we knew wasn't going to do the trick. And so, the notion of working regionally was something that was important in the beginning. The other thing that was important in the beginning was something that Priscilla just touched on, which is having a set of more diverse partners than we've seen in the past around this. So the notion of multi-sector partnership was really important and a centerpiece from the beginning. And that was not easy. We don't all speak the same language.
Nope.
No,
And so, figuring out how to get folks who have not historically spoken the same language, worked on the same issues, to work together was something that was significant and important, and I think a hallmark for the Partnership for the Bay's future. The third thing that I would highlight is, I mentioned before, I've been in the housing world for a long time, and one of the things that has always frustrated me about the housing world is that whatever room you went into, it was that room that thought that they had the silver bullet around
Right.
housing.
Right.
So, if you go into the room with the tenant protection folks, the way to deal with the housing crisis is tenant protection.
right.
If you go into the room with the folks who are, housing developers, the way that they approach this is a supply and demand
Right.
problem, and we just don't have enough supply. If you talk to the folks who are affordable housing developers, all you need to do is give us more money so we can produce more affordable housing.
Right.
And the power in the Partnership for the Bay's future is in the ability to bring together folks across sectors and across these different interest groups to come up with solutions that really seek to hit the mark at the highest common denominator.
Right.
So those are the only things that I would add to what.
So I want you to
Priscilla said.
double click on the structure, because what you all did was, it wasn't just theoretical about getting different sectors and different perspectives in the room. You created a structure to make that happen.
Yeah. And a big part of the structure was centering community organizations. So the idea here was not that that the proximity to the money and the power was going to make us the smartest folks in the room. The idea here was that we needed to develop solutions that were based on the work that was on the ground.
Right.
And so when you hear us talk about the family of funds, or when you hear us talk about the policy fund, both of those came out of deep discussions over months about what the field needed and a response to those discussions.
Right. So, Brett, I'm going to stay with you on this next question, and then get to the rest of the panel also. So it's been 5 years. So talk about some of the impact that's happened over these 5 years.
Yeah. You want me to go
Yeah,
first?
yeah, you just go first.
So I guess what I'll do is focus in on some of the impact from the policy fund
Great.
point of view, because that's where we are kind of most proximate. And the first thing that I will say is mention is some of the softer impacts. So, developing policy that is in pursuit of equitable outcomes requires us to do it a little bit differently.
See.
And the thing that I think is a really important kind of impact from the policy fund point of view is this notion of three kind of core components. One is kind of investing in the capacity of local government. Two is the partnering of these local government entities with community groups in the beginning. And I just want to emphasize that, in the beginning, because the usual song and dance is that a policy idea will come up. The legislators will go in the back room, and then folks will figure out, how do we get community groups to
Right.
support this or that?
Right.
And not having the community groups developing the policy in the beginning. And so that, I think, is a really important outcome, and it's developed a set of relationships in some of these communities that I think will have durability and will lead to other policy developments as well. And then the last piece is this notion of a fellow that gets
right.
embedded in a local government entity and acts as like circuit rider or center of gravity for the policy to move through that process, which I call, food winding its way through the snake.
Right.
And so that has been important, and it has led to the development of a pipeline of young people of color and other folks who are now in local government and advancing policy, and really, I think, will lead to advancements as well. So I start with that impact, and but then just to get into some more straightforward stuff. Over 73,000 tenants protected
Amazing.
as a result of that
Amazing.
work.
Right.
And over 500 community groups engaged 20,000 community members engaged in the development and implementation of policy. I mean, those kinds of things in places all across the region. So we're talking about Berkeley, Palo Alto, Antioch, Oakland, all across the region where you see folks developing policies that are really getting at these 3 Ps of protection, preservation, and production.
Fantastic. So, Priscilla, to you, some of the impact
Yeah.
you want to talk about and brag about.
I'll talk a little bit about the loan fund, but one thing I want to add to the brags on the policy is that these fellows happen to be in place spring of 2020.
Yes, right.
The pandemic hit. And these fellows being in place were able to move a lot of those COVID, you remember those, like the rent, the eviction moratoriums, like these fellows were able to work alongside many folks in city government to do that work in 2020.
From their living rooms.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
From their Zoom rooms,
Wherever they were.
Wherever they were. Wow.
Yes, that was just fortuitous.
Right.
That moment happened. So alongside the policy fund, there was a loan fund, and the loan fund, we had a goal of raising $500 million. Huge amount of money. And what we did was we first by scoping like what kind of loans would we make. And just like Fred was mentioning, we started by really looking at the housing sector and saying like, what are the types of loan products that work? What are the new types of loan products that would help move housing development faster, to be able to, what are the gaps, and not just amongst existing loan products that can enable the development of housing. And so the team scoped out what types of loan products that list could help provide. And they went out to raise $500 million. And it felt, I remember being on the stage and being like, we're going to raise $500 million. And actually surpassed that goal.
Yes.
$600 million was raised. And that money has been deployed and it's put at work. And 4,400 homes are now being built or have been built to house 11,000 people.
Wow.
And 90% of that housing stock is for people who make 80% or less of the area median income, which for San Francisco, just so everyone has sort of a number in mind, it makes a family of 4 makes $115,000 or less. So families who are working, families who are far below that are able to actually access that housing to be able to live in the Bay Area. And equity has been top of mind in those loan products and making sure that we're reaching those who have historically been specifically excluded or marginalized. And 50% of the developers who access the loan fund are people of color. So throughout the layers of the way these loan products were built and designed and deployed, have taken specifically economic and racial equity into consideration. And here's one that Ruby was like, you want to talk about that? I was like, yes, I would.
Yeah, good.
Defaults.
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's talk about defaults.
Yes.
Like, we loaned out this money. Did people pay us back?
Right.
What happened? We had structured CZI's contribution to be first loss capital, so to de-risk that for the other lenders to take on that risk first. So, like, how much did we lose? And we've made 50. The fund has made 50 loans. We've had 1, maybe 2 defaults.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. I think it says 2 things. One is that it's safe for traditional lenders to do this. The risk is actually below that of traditional lending. The other thing that I like is that it's not 0. Because if it was 0, it's like, maybe we were playing it too
Too
safe.
safe, yeah, right, right.
Okay, like maybe we didn't actually like reach far enough and stretch ourselves to say, could we consider this?
Right.
And so the fact that there are some proves that, like, this is a cohort that if it were not but for the Partnership for the Bay's Future, their project may not have existed.
Right.
So I actually
amazing.
really likes, sharing and celebrating, our
good.
2 defaults.
Yes, that's great. That is great. That is great.
And then, a couple of the house, the team has been working through like how to access public lands. There's a lot of faith-owned land, a lot of school district-owned land. It's complicated, but there's a lot of it. And how can we unlock that for housing? Scale is one that we should talk about. We put Morgan Stanley had a loan product that was that they have used in other regions to support the development of housing, but they didn't want to use it in the Bay Area because they were concerned that the higher cost of building in the Bay Area didn't make wouldn't be a fit.
Okay.
And so we incentivized them. We put in $10 million. They put in $150 million to a loan product. That's great. And it's been incredibly successful. And now, without CZI's contribution, they are putting together a $250 million fund.
Excellent.
Doing the same thing.
Same work.
Same work. Unlocking that, it's continuing to move forward. That's super exciting.
Yes. Yes. The name of this panel is The Power of Philanthropy. That is what philanthropy can do. Help unlock the bigger dollars.
For us,
That's
$10 million is a lot, but 10x that is a lot.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And then, the last bit is the Bay Area Housing Authority.
Yes.
Other groups are replicating this work throughout other regions. And I think that is something we can all be super proud of.
I agree. I'm going to turn it now to Chris because he's on the ground and been on the ground. And so from your perspective, what has been the impact of this kind of initiative?
Well, first things first, we paid back the loan. I wasn't one of those two. We're good. I just want to make sure. No, and it's great to be on this panel.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for inviting everything. It's always great to see you, Nicole, and so great to meet you. And it's always great to be with Fred, or as we call him in Fruitvale, the Jay-Z of philanthropy. So cool.
That is so right.
That's so great.
Look, he's wearing.
I know.
So
So then can I be Beyonce?
You can. That's it.
Beyonce
Right.
philanthropy.
It's catching on too, because I was just talking to one of our colleagues like last week, and we were just catching up, and he's like, "Hey, have you seen Jay-Z?" I'm like, "I saw him last week. I'm on a panel with him next week." Oh, I got. See, he's always out there
If you
fighting
build
for
it,
us.
they will
He's
come.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I love it. Easy. Okay.
What was the question again?
The impact.
Oh,
What have
no.
you seen in terms of the
Yeah.
impact of the initiative in the last 5 years?
Well,
I know.
I think that the power of this, that as we see it and how we've been able to use it, is a leverage.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you come in, you're not afraid. You're, especially around the preservation housing. And also, before I talk about the preservation housing and how we leverage, I also want to happy Women's History Month. Everything I'm going to talk about, the projects I'm talking about,
Yeah.
the 2 main projects I'm talking about, are all being led by women, in our real estate teams, and I think that's important to acknowledge, right? Women and women of color are leading, right? But specifically around the preservation deal, there was, I think, we contemplated it a lot. We knew that was, I think, a way to really move the needle to keep folks housed, keep them in affordable housing, but there's a lot of risk involved, and I think who's going to make the initial capital? Who's going to put forward the initial capital? And that's what you guys did, right? And I think that's what's so important. It's like at least you kind of get us started, and then we use that leverage as we acquire the properties to go back and work with the cities and the counties and just leverage that initial investment to the max. And one of the properties that we're talking about is on on 36th Avenue, 2036th Avenue. Maybe we could show a photo. We have a couple of before and after photos. So yeah, so this is we purchased 3 properties, a total of 80 units. And so this is the biggest property. It's 55 units. And I think we closed on this in September 2020, right? So as much due diligence as we could do to inspect and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
we knew we were going to miss things, right? And so it's probably just not your normal deal. So we need to have the capital to somebody take a chance on this to let's at least acquire it and then really get in. And once we did, we found a lot of things, yes, that we may have missed. But I think part of it was we weren't really able to engage with the tenants, all of 20. It wasn't really until 21. And I remember in, I think, July 2021, we held like a barbecue there. So it was July, it was July, and we had pop-ups. And I remember standing in the middle there and just kind of looking around. 55 units, all 1 bedrooms. I think there's 4 2-bedrooms, 2 2-bedrooms. So Rebecca's helping me because she actually is our site manager who actually lives there now, has been living there. And I remember just standing there and kind of looking around and counting bikes. And so I was like, okay, there's 20 over there, there's 15 over there. So I counted like 65 bikes and there's
Wow.
55 units. So, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Oakland is like the densest, Fruitvale is the densest part of Oakland.
Yep.
It has 3 times as many children as the Mission does in San Francisco. So there are just enormous amount of, not
Wow.
enormous, but there are tons of kids. So I'm just looking around at all these kids. And there's really nowhere for them to play, right? And because it's barren, there's
Right.
a little bit of grass there.
So you were standing at this picnic,
Yeah.
thinking this.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, and then I remembered, one of my board members, Jose Corona, works for Eat, Learn, Play, and I think they build, playgrounds. And so I reached out to him, and they work with Kaboom. So that started this whole process of developing that, which the following year, I think we have another photo that shows kind of like,
Oh, wow. Wow.
So we're able to leverage that.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, this is one of the benefits, and the Currys were great. They actually came out. They actually did a kind of a lot of events leading up to this, and during the Christmas season before. But I think the real leverage again is working with the cities, leverage that money, and I think as of next month we start the complete rehab of these buildings. And it took us a few years to work with the city, but we raised
Right.
I think 26 million. So we're going to rehab all 3 of the buildings, and that will start next month. But in the meantime, these tenants are like a part of our network, right? I remember when we purchased this building in September of 20, right, height of that pandemic. We were doing a lot of food distributions at the Transit Village, and I was in one of the restaurants, and they were preparing a bunch of foods that we distribute. And the cash person and everything, her name is Irma. I ordered, and then I kind of went a step to the side, but she just kind of kept looking over at me, right? And I was like, well, she keeps looking at me, like, what's going on? And where I have a mask on and everything.
Right,
I was
right.
like, I was just kind of, 6 foot staying away. And then finally, she comes walking around, and she walks up to me, and she's like, did the Unity Council purchase 36th Avenue? And I said, I kind of looked, I'm like, yeah. I go, why would you say that? And she's like, so you own it. The Unity Council owns it now, right? Not the other people. Because the other people were not like,
Oh, wow.
good. And I'm
Wow.
like, yes, like we own it now. And then she's like, so are you going to raise the rent? I'm like, no. Just give us a chance. We're going to get in there. We're going to start, making the improvements and everything. And then she says, but it's not the other.
Oh, wow.
And I said, no, it's
Not
us.
the other owner.
And then she's like, okay. And I said, why? She's like, well, because I live there. My mother lives there. My sister lives there. Our kids live there. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And that I think it just showed like how close we are to this.
Right.
Right. And it was like, wow, okay, you're an essential worker. You're already part of our network.
Right.
I go, things are going to change. Like things are going to change. So then she goes back to the cash register, keeps looking at me. So I'm like, okay, well, all right,
You're on the hook
something else,
now.
right?
You're on the hook.
Right. So
Right.
she comes walking back around, and he's like, so can we talk about parking now?
I love it. I love it.
We can
I
start
love
talking about
it.
parking. Yeah. So it's
But
and then-
I mean, it wasn't just parking. Head Start,
Oh,
you brought
oh,
in,
yeah, then,
right?
yeah,
All
then
the
it was-
services you brought
yeah.
in.
Yeah, once we acquired it, then it was like we started just bringing all of our services
Right.
up there, and and working with the residents. We had a partnership with Samuel Merritt University, so
Yep.
they started sending their nurses up there once a week for health checks, every 2 weeks for behavioral health challenges. And as we were finding things, they were, I think, trusting us more to tell us like what else was going on.
Right.
But we immediately had to make some seismic upgrades, and then like the electrical systems were like top priority, but we were able to jump on those right away. And I think now we see these competitions between the developments, like with the kids playing soccer against Casa Sueños kids, and it's just like all these things. Yeah, and it's really been amazing. But it's also to have Rebecca actually living there, and
You guys, that closeness.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
So, can you go a level up and talk about, beyond just the actual sites? How does a partnership like this help your overall goals for your organization? What has it done?
Well, I think, during the pandemic, and we've talked about this, I'm actually doing a lot of work with Fred and his team around this Latino kitchen cabinet and
Yes.
Latino Latinx Power Building Initiative. So we're working right now with 10 organizations throughout the Bay Area, from Pescadero, San Rafael, Contra Costa. And we're going into our second year right now. We just had a convening last Friday in San Rafael with the Canal Alliance.
Right.
And, and so we're working with leadership all these things, and the number one issue with every single organization is housing.
Housing.
Affordable housing, creating more housing, housing for their clients, housing for their staff, and food insecurity is like right
with it.
right with it. But I think what you're seeing is the belief in a lot of these organizations that they could do this too, right? So whether it's Pescadero, they're calling us, it's like, hey, we have an opportunity to buy like a 20-unit building. Do you think we should manage it ourselves? We're going to be able to support farm workers. There's clean, basic stuff, clean
Right.
water and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, no, this is what you need. This, and this. Okay, we don't have an attorney. Okay, we send an attorney. We don't have, this. It's just like, we're able to do this on scale, right? So instead of just focusing on ourselves, now we're, kind of like best practices of what we learned working with you guys to really hit a bunch of
So
broader
you've
market.
spread the hope and the reality that it can happen.
Yeah.
And helping the assistance to make it happen.
Yeah.
Nicole, can I
Yes,
just jump
absolutely.
on one thing that Chris is highlighting, which is, I think, an important kind of philanthropic lesson here. I mean, traditionally, we in philanthropy look for the singular organization,
Right.
like the Unity Council,
Right.
to invest in and support, because we are looking for that one institution that can solve problems in their community. What this represents, and Chris hinted at it, but I just wanted to amplify it, is the Partnership for the Bay's Future is actually supporting the ecosystem. And it's the ecosystem, a strong ecosystem, that is necessary in order to solve big, complex problems like this.
Yeah.
Not that we go away from supporting the Unity Councils. We need strong institutions too, but we need strong institutions operating in strong ecosystems.
Right.
And both of those investments are important from a philanthropic point of view.
Right. Well, that actually leads to the next question about, what were the key principles or strategies that we've learned from this that philanthropy needs to keep in mind? What are those key pieces that are making it possible? Priscilla, if you want to.
I think for us, this is a really great example of thinking about what is the right role that philanthropy should play, and what is the broader ecosystem?
Yeah.
Like, there are developers, there are community-based organizations, the banks need to be involved in this. And so really looking at how each different group, where the leverages, where the differentiated impact can be. And I will say that this group has just been so incredibly pragmatic. Look, a lot of us want a revolution in the way housing is built, right?
Right.
But in reality, it was like this unit right here. It's like really being on the ground, like, what is the next step? Like, it's the electrical, it's the playground, it's whatever comes next, and just embracing like whatever the next priorities need to be. And because that all of that all those steps, all those incremental steps can lead to a revolution pretty quickly.
Right.
But if you have to get pragmatic and you have to say, like, what is the next step that we need to make
Yeah.
in order to move this forward?
Right, right. What do you think, Fred? Any, lessons that you were saying, right? Building on that, any other lessons that philanthropy should take from this, and what it really takes to have success?
Yeah, I mean, Priscilla actually talked about it a little bit earlier. Different forms of capital. So, I mean, there are grants that are going out the door, but the family of funds
Right.
Has had a tremendous impact. And, I'm sure Priscilla doesn't want to toot her horn too much, but I don't want to undersell the importance of that initial investment in being the first loss and what that did to bring other capital in.
Right.
So different forms of capital, different ways to invest, using, in addition to our ability to kind of mobilize financial capital, using our influence and our leverage. And another thing that Priscilla didn't talk about, which I think has been important, is she's used her own personal capital
Yes.
to bring people to the table, folks who are
Yes.
not necessarily in our networks.
Yeah.
I've been at dinner meetings at her house where,
Yes.
she's kind of headlocking folks to say, kind of, come along. All that is a part of the tool belt. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, no, absolutely. So from your perspective, Chris, what other, what would you say in terms of the lessons that on this kind of philanthropic initiative?
Well, I think it just can't be like you. I mean, a lot of the philanthropic folks you talked about. It seems like there's a core group that are willing to jump in and take risk, right? But there's a lot, and I mean, I think there's a lot more that are kind of sitting on the sidelines,
Yes.
right? And they're not, committed. So I think this is a way for them to see, okay, maybe this isn't as risky as we thought.
Right.
And so I think, how do we put maybe more pressure on them? I call them like the fortress philanthropy. Like, you can't even get to them. Right? They're not in their offices anymore. You're not even sure where they're at. And, we're just kind of like, where? I mean, I think I saw somebody over there. Whatever. So it's like finding a way to kind of loop them into this mix, because like, if you're not going to be doing it now, then you're just not going to jump in, right? Because I think as we're and everybody talks about like this equitable recovery,
Right.
And we're not completely seeing that, right? So I think if there's still work to be done, there's still opportunities, and I think to be creative too. I'm glad you mentioned the banks, right? Because I think they're also kind of sitting tight too, right?
Yes.
And I got in trouble a couple of years because I was talking a lot of trash about one of the banks, and I got called into the principal's office, and they didn't trust me being by myself, so Fred was in there too. And, it was
Jay-Z's also a
Jay-Z.
chaperone.
Jay-Z's a chaperone.
Yay, the chaperone.
Yeah, Jay-Z's a chaperone, and it was with Jamie Dimon, right? Directly, and
Right.
and but I think it moved a lot, right? I mean, they started really, I think, kind of doubling down in Oakland and stuff like that. But and I think, but I still think there's still plenty of room for them now.
Yes,
to,
absolutely.
engage.
Nicole, just one other thing
Yeah,
I would
go ahead.
mention is, we in philanthropy tend to think sometimes that we can solve these issues without engaging government.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I don't just say this because actually Chris and I met in government. And I don't just say this because I used to work in local government. That's where the resources are.
Right.
It's where the lion's share of the underwriting is happening. It's where the tax credits are getting leveraged. And we're fooling ourselves, actually, if we think that we can tackle issues like this without being in partnership with government, particularly local government. And so that's another, I think, important lesson here.
Right.
That, we can't isolate ourselves and inoculate ourselves from what I think a lot of folks in philanthropy think of like the messiness of the
Right,
politics.
right.
It's the messiness of the politics that actually will get you to the result that
Yeah,
you need.
yeah. So I want to build on this in this next question. and we've 8 minutes left, and I think it's an important one because, today is about celebrating. We've got to stop sometimes and just, we talked about this before we all came on stage, we got to stop sometimes and just celebrate the work that's happened to give us energy to keep in it and keep up the fight and keep up the work and pushing. So with that, and knowing that it's so easy to get frustrated, so easy to go down the rabbit hole of worry, about the next step, and can we make it, or are they gonna approve this loan, or are we gonna get to the next phase of development? What gives you optimism? What gives you optimism right now? Chris, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think, for me, seeing how, my team, seeing how the community came together and responded during the pandemic, right? I mean, that was just a huge lesson because, you stay at home, wear a mask, everything that was going on. But our staff was like, no, we need to feed people, we need to do this and this, and just unafraid and committed to the community, right? And it just wasn't us. Believe me, there was all kinds of organizations that stepped in and just did some really amazing things, really powerful things. I know we were having just a tough time with food, and I got a call from Roberto Hernandez here in San Francisco in the Mission Food Hub and said, hey, do you guys need more food? And I said, yes. And he says, okay, I have a semi-truck of food for you every Friday at 10, but you have to come pick it up. You need to send your own truck. And, a local company in Oakland would send their semi every Friday to go pick up the food and bring it back to Fruitvale, right? But I think, but it was all, so that gave me a ton of hope. And then I think, we heard these discussions going on. We heard that all this stuff was brewing, but we really didn't know what it meant, right? And then all of a sudden to see that started to happen, it's just like, okay, we are more aligned than we're not. And I think Fred's point about the government is something that definitely can't be ignored because that's where, again, a lot of the resources sit. So, I just feel that you should be celebrating this. This is it's a shining example. I think we continue to build on this. And there's so much power behind that and opportunity that I think we're in a really good spot right now.
That's great. Yeah. Priscilla, what makes you optimistic about the future?
I agree. Today is just so fun to talk about this. But I will say that I was like a blocker in the beginning of this. Caitlin Fox, who you remember and know well, she was like, we should work on housing. I was like, that's going to be a hard no. And because I was like, this is too big. Right. This is too much. Like, what are we supposed to do? I don't know how to contribute in a problem that feels so big and is so complicated. So many different partners need to come to the table. And I think what gives me optimism is the sort of grit and passion of people like Caitlin and creativity, who's like, well, let me try again. Let's reframe. And that's when she came to the table really talking about how do we get banks involved? How do we get leverage from our money? We contributed the $40 million of first loss capital, but we didn't know how, we say that that's a thing now. It wasn't a thing. That wasn't a thing. And there were lots of creative people who designed this financial solution. And for us, we knew how to make grants. Right. And, maybe we would have given you the grant and you would have bought that and that would have been the end of the story. But the passion, the creativity, and the ability to engage with others to sort of create a bigger movement. And, and hope, you see examples and that's inherently hopeful and drives people to do more. And so it's the people who sort of help solve problems, and the human mind is powerful. We can come up with creative solutions to hard problems.
Absolutely. Fred.
Yeah, so it's people like Chris in the Unity Council, to tell you the truth, that give me hope. I mean, you heard the story that Chris just told. What you don't hear unless you're in the field is how many Unity Councils how many Chris's there are who are out there in the field, the Metas, the Pastor Baines, and with We Hope. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of passionate, sophisticated, innovative people on the ground that really just need that infusion of the right resource at the right time.
Right.
to get something done. And it's not just the folks on the ground. There's also like a really sophisticated and effective group of advocates who have emerged over the last few years, like, you know, the Nonprofit Housing Association
Right,
in Northern
right.
California. You know, just that the list goes on. Enterprise, others who have been working on getting policy wins. And the thing that makes me optimistic is they're actually getting wins. So like we talked about the Bay Area Housing Financing Agency, that didn't exist 5 years ago.
Right, right.
And you know, now folks are working on putting a $10 to $20 billion ballot measure, the
Right.
first regional housing
Yes,
bond ever,
yes,
to
yes.
populate that. So I mean, there's just win after win after win that I'm
Right.
seeing, and even in the face of continual struggles around affordability and seeing, you know, our unhoused brothers and sisters, I still see us making progress, and that always gives me hope.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
And I just want to, as a partner, the inspiration when I first came on the job 5 years ago, and to hear that this was happening, and my board and I were like, we are in, we've got to be in, because the leadership that Fred demonstrated, and Priscilla, when you came in and did what you all did, I think it allowed a lot of the rest of philanthropy in the region to be like, oh, wait, we can lean in too. You actually opened the door and made it possible for the rest of us to see what can happen. And as a result, you know, thousands of people are living in homes now because of what's happened tens of thousands of people over what's happened over the last 5 years. So thank you for the leadership, the foresight, the inspiration, and thank you for what you do every day on the ground with your teams and community. Couldn't do it without you and all of the folks that are like you out in the field. So please, round of applause.